Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx back in the DJcity UK lab, and today I'm reviewing the latest mixer from Allen Heath, the Xone PX5. Now this is a pro mixer, street price around about $1,500, and that puts it in the same kind of ballpark as the Xone 92, which is still available, that's not going away. That is Allen Heath's classic analog mixer, pure analog, 4-band EQ, 2 filters, 2 effects sends, but just analog and nothing else. Then if you go up a little bit more in terms of money, you've got the Xone DB4, which I reviewed here on the channel a while back, and that is still one of my favorite mixers on the planet. I absolutely love it. That one, all digital. So you've got a totally digital architecture, you've got input matrix, loads of effects, loads of configurability and so on. And that's the two extremes. So you've got the 92 all analog, the DB4 all digital, and now we have the PX5, which kind of sits halfway between the two. It's an analog mixer. So in terms of sound quality, let's just get this out of the way. This is an amazing sounding mixer on a club system. Sounds super fat. The top end is really crisp, but the bass is just warm and fat and lovely. And yeah, it just sounds so good. And that's just, you know, straight out of the way. Sound quality on this is really awesome. But we've got a load of digital stuff going on in here as well. We have a 10 in, 10 out audio interface, and there are some effects built in to the mixer as well. You've got an external effects send and return, but we also have a bunch of really high quality, studio quality effects built in. So yeah, is this a compromise between those two worlds, or is it the best of two worlds? Let's find out. So having established that the sound quality is great, how about the build? Again, fantastic, really solid across the board. Everything about the PX5 feels precise and tightly engineered to a really high level. I've given up my crusade against plastic pots. They seem to be on absolutely everything these days, so I won't try and fight the tide anymore. I do still have an issue with the black on black colour scheme of current Xones, and I've worked out why. It's because in the past, Allen Heath have been one of the few manufacturers to actually make hardware with more contrasting colours, so I'm less inclined to give them a pass on that than I am with other companies. Just having some contrasting knobs on there would make it far more usable in the dark. In terms of connections, the PX5 is absolutely comprehensive. 4 main channels feature both line and phono inputs with really nice preamps, as well as USB, which I'll get to later. There's also a 5th channel which can serve as an auxiliary line input, USB effects return, or a mic channel. You have a proper effects send and return with high or low level, which will make it popular with the guitar pedal effects crew, and a proper master insert for hooking smoothly into a compressor or other audio processing module. The outputs are similarly well furnished with XLR and RCA master outs, TRS booth output, and a dedicated record output. Couldn't really ask for more from an analog mixer. When we get to the digital side, that's all good too. You have a 24-bit 96 kHz audio interface with 5 stereo ins and outs. It sounds clean and is nice and flexible in that you can assign whether the phono or line signals are sent to the inputs on a per channel basis. You can also choose whether the 5th output is to be used as a record out or as the effects send, returning into the aux channel. This works really well with Traktor, as you can put the software's effects into send mode and have loads of extra control over them. Speaking of Traktor, the PX5 is now fully Traktor Scratch certified, and that works exactly as expected in a DVS setup. As so much of the Xone range is now compatible with Serato's club kit, I'm hopeful we'll see that with the PX5 at some point, but there's no word on that yet. The only flaw with the USB hookup is that there is only just the one of them. Dual audio interfaces are rapidly becoming the standard on club install mixers, and having just the one on the PX5 does reduce the ease of use for changeovers between DJs, especially with the USB socket hidden away at the rear of the mixer. There is more still to talk about with the connectivity of the PX5. It has an X-Link port to link directly to add-on Xone controllers like the K2, which has always been a smart feature, and a traditional 5-pin MIDI port for syncing up external MIDI hardware. The unit can send that MIDI clock over USB too, and you control it via the effects section at the top right of the mixer. Which brings us to the effects themselves. Having used the DB4 extensively, I expected a lot from the quality and sound of the effects on the PX5, and it didn't disappoint. From subtle delays to filthy distortion, there's something here for all tastes, and the control scheme is pretty consistent across them all, meaning any experienced DJ should be able to understand them very quickly. The illumination of the control knobs is a great addition, helping you see at a glance what's going on, and the flexibility of the routing is exemplary. you can assign to each channel, the master or the sends, with pre or post fader routing. If you're used to the Pioneer way of doing things, this is quite different, but having the ability to control the amount of send individually on each channel is actually a lot more powerful. You can even choose whether to send a signal to the internal effects, the effects loop, or both on a per channel basis, and the external return can be sent to the filter as well. You can even use the crossfader itself as a control for the effects. Not something I do as I use the fader, but still a cool feature for some people. One final note on the effects, I'm delighted to report that the BPM for them can now be dialed in completely manually if you wish. The auto detection is still fine, but I really missed that manual option on their previous mixers, and it's great to see it here on the PX5. Queuing is again comprehensive, with 2 sizes of headphone socket, split queue and pre-master queuing, like Rain and previous Xones, much more usable for in-ear monitoring than Pioneer's system. The bright and clear VU meters do a great job of helping you keep the levels in check, although there is a ton of headroom on here if you like to push things. The usual Xone filter puts in an appearance with high, low and bandpass options and a resonance control, and it performs as well as expected. There is just the one, however, as opposed to the 2 found on the 92 and the DB4 and the per channel ones found on Pioneer DJMs. For me, it's not a big deal. I generally use filters as an effect and therefore quite sparingly, but I can definitely see it being an issue for many DJs who have made filtering an integral part of their mixing style. We now have a generation of DJs who've grown up knowing a world where high pass, low pass combo filters are on every bit of DJ gear they've ever used, from their first controller onwards. And I do fear those people will find the filter situation on the PX5 disappointing, regardless of how good that filter is. A few other details worth noting: the 3-band full kill EQ will not meet the approval of Xone 92 fanatics, but it sounds good and I think it enhances the straightforward nature of the PX5. 4-band is great for that serious sound sculpting, but not so practical for quick mixing, and the PX5 is much more suitable for multi-genre use, I feel. One area which is super important to open format DJs is of course the crossfader, and this one is better. I've given Allen Heath a hard time about their faders in the past, and this one is sharp enough, but the cut-in distance is just still a hair too long for really comfortable cuts. It's usable, but not ideal. They do offer an Inner Fader Pro upgrade if cutting is your thing, but I'd rather just see a mini Inner Fader in there as standard, even if it meant the price of the mixer went up slightly. So there you go, my take on the Xone PX5. Ultimately, there is a demographic of DJs for whom the Xone 92 is the perfect mixer. They will never want or desire any other mixer than the 92. I suspect it will be on the market until the end of time, because yeah, those people are just totally happy with that mixer. They don't want anything else, and I don't think the PX5 will particularly turn the heads of those people. But there are also lots of DJs out there who want some modern facilities in their mixer. They want some digital stuff. They want the audio interface in there. They want the actual built-in effects in the mixer, and that's where the PX5 kind of takes some of that power of the DB4 and brings it into a far more accessible and user-friendly format, which is what is really great about this. You've got that super fat analog sound. It is there. It is, you know, up there with the best sounding mixers in the world, but you've got the digital stuff too. The audio interface works really well, sounds really good. The effects controls are actually very intuitive. You know, nothing about this mixer, if you're an experienced DJ, there's nothing on here that should like weird you out. You know, all the layout is very kind of logical, and as you would expect from a big, large format mixer like this, it's what you're kind of used to. The effects controls are totally intuitive once you've nailed it down. It'll take you 2 minutes to work out what you're doing with them, and then they sound great and they're very controllable without being overly complex. The way that you work with the actual sends, in many respects, is kind of a step up from like a Pioneer DJM. It is different, but it's kind of a step up because it gives you much more fine control over multiple channels at once. So you've just got to get used to it, and once you have, the power is definitely there. My one criticism, I'm afraid it's always coming back to this with Xone mixers, the fader just isn't quite on point. It's better than some of their previous faders, but it's not quite there still. The cut-in distance, just a little bit too long. So I'd love to see Allen Heath put either the mini inner fader or the Pro crossfader in there as standard, and that would just elevate this mixer to being a far more powerful open format machine. Because actually it works great for open format. You know, there's nothing too housey about it in every other respect, you know, or unlike some of their other stuff, you know, which kind of feels very house and techno orientated. This feels very good for open format. It feels great. The effects work really well for open format. You've got the control of the BPM now manually, which you didn't have before. So that's all great, but just that fader just kind of lets it down. So if you're going to buy one, budget for the upgrade fader in there, and that will just really get this thing going for you. Overall though, the build, the sound, the implementation of all the digital stuff, this thing is absolutely fantastic. And if you're in the market for a high-end kind of hybrid mixer, this has got to be up there near the top of your list. Thank you for watching today. Make sure you subscribe for all our future tips, tricks and product reviews. I'll see you soon.